Hey, everybody. We are live on a Monday night, and we are here to bring you, of course, the review of the latest episode of The Mandalorian, and it begins right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So we actually just got the latest episode of The Mandalorian, episode 6. I believe it was called Tragedy, right?
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, let's get into this thing, man. This is a really good episode, I thought. This actually brought us back to what I think fans were actually hoping to see when they actually, were looking forward to season 2 of the show.
Yeah, I mean, we're here. The kind of story picks up right at Tython, which I was actually surprised to see, actually, because I figured they might have done like a little detour and then maybe got into Tython like at the very end. But I mean, I was actually pleasantly surprised that they actually started off there. And so, of course, as our heroes, the Mandalorian Din Djarin and Grogu are making their descent. He's looking at the stone. He's trying to figure out, like, all right, where to land. He couldn't land his ship kind of right where he wanted to, so they kind of had to, go airborne a little bit and jetpack on over there. Had a little like a Rocketeer moment, if you remember that movie.
And I do. Like, it's right back here. That's the one I chose because unfortunately I actually had to do like this whole somewhat makeshift studio thing because I couldn't get to our actual studio today. But I'm like,
Right.
man, I didn't want to, postpone or anything like that. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to make it work here. So yes, I chose the jetpack with, little Rocketeer moment, like you said, with man, I keep wanting to call him Baby Yoda.
I know we've been doing it for so long. We said that was going to happen, though.
You know what, though? I was watching some other reviews on it and everything, and people are still doing it, man. I mean, everybody.
Oh, of course.
And people are actually just like kind of, you know what? He's just Baby Yoda. I don't care what his name is. So we're in good company that way.
Exactly. So they kind of land on the same, basically on the rough side of the mountain, as it were, and trekked on up there to the Seeing Stone. And I thought it was really hilarious the fact that once he kind of sat Baby Yoda, I mean, now you got me doing it. Grogu up there. He said Grogu up there. He's all looking for like a button or some sort of handle or lever to push.
Man, that was actually the funniest thing to me because that's
exactly what you would do.
And this is one of the things that I really love about this show is that it's really, I mean, in a way, it kind of sounds weird to say this about Star Wars, but it's kind of true to life. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, exactly. It's like
this is the kind of thing you would do.
Yeah, it captures your actual human emotions and reactions to things. I think that's what it really does really well. So I remember I told you that on the phone too. I was like, yeah, when you see this episode, you're gonna laugh at that part because it's just so hilarious. Because that's exactly what you would do.
Completely what you would do. And I mean, and I just think it was so funny because he's like down, he's all looking around and everything. Like, is there a button? And then he's asking him
visors on and
yeah, exactly. When he switched his visor and just started like looking to see if there was some hidden thing, I was dying. I thought that was one of the funniest moments. And then of course, didn't at 1.2 he was like, well, start this thing up or whatever.
He's like, well, do you see anything, or does anyone see you, or are they supposed to see you first, or like he's just asking him all these questions? But that's exactly what you would do. Like, I don't know, I'm not a Jedi, I wouldn't know anything about this crap. So
yeah, and I mean, and that's exactly, and I think that's so, like you said, true to life, and that's one of the things that I really again appreciate about the show. And moving on, I can honestly say that just from watching season 1 all the way up, it really is kind of, I mean, the whole season, right from the beginning, it's basically what you would do if you were this guy. And if you remember at our last show, I was talking about how in a lot of ways, especially season 1, watching The Mandalorian was a lot like playing a video game, like playing an RPG video game. Because you really felt like you were almost like you were on this journey. It's very similar to, you're looking for your main quest and then you get involved in these side quests and you can get really lost in those games. At least I do. But it's really interesting because the show captures that vibe perfectly. You know, you're on this journey with this guy, and you don't necessarily know where he's going to go next, and you feel like he's making the decisions that you might make. You know, when he's presented with a quest or something. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
You know, so I mean that, and it's same thing with this whole Seeing Stone thing. It was basically like, okay, if it was you, and imagine you were playing a game. Imagine this were a game. Okay, you set Grogu on the throne. The first thing you would do if you're controlling the character is actually start looking around and, you know.
Yeah, like is there a lever or?
Yeah, is there like a lever? Is there, you know, is there some little thing I'm supposed to do? I mean, do I say something to the thing? You know, I mean, it's basically like, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was actually really brilliant. So then, of course, you know, as he's awaiting the stone to activate or whatnot, there's a ship. There's another ship that lands, and we recognize that ship all too well. It's
man. I mean, how did you feel when you saw Slave One? By the way, this is a spoiler review for anybody that you know hasn't clued in. I think we call it that on the title, but still, just you know, in fair warning. And feel free, you know, if you're watching this live, feel free to chat with us. You know, we're ready for your comments. And if you're watching the rebroadcast, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section. We really enjoy your comments. A lot of people have been commenting on the various shows that we're doing and bring up some real points. Yeah, definitely do that. But yeah, when you first saw Slave One, I mean, how did you feel?
Man, I always look at it as you know, it's funny because I look at Slave One. It kind of always reminds me of one of those old school irons. If you just flip it, or it kind of reminds me of like the old notary.
Yes, I never really looked at it that way, but you're totally right, man. I mean, it just seems like you know.
I mean, it's such an odd design, but it's kind of cool though how it works. But yeah, I was like, as soon as I saw, I was like, no way, it's Slave One, and it's like, all right, yep, it's got to be Boba Fett. And you know, you just kind of wondering, like, okay, well, how the heck did he find him? You know, because you're like, because remember we were talking about, you know, at one point, did Gideon hire Boba Fett to actually, you know, seek out the Mandalorian? So that's what I was thinking had happened. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe, you know, that's what has transpired at this point. Hey, Ronaldo, what's going on, man?
Ronaldo.
Yep, he's here.
All right.
And
now we can officially start the show, right?
Right. Yeah. The gang's all here.
Yep. But yeah, no, you're right. And that's a really good point, because remember when we left him at the end of episode 1, he was just sort of watching him go off. It wasn't like he actually knew, at least we don't think he knew where he was going. You know, it was just kind of like he was just sort of watching him, you know, ride off or whatever. So that's a good point. It's like, how did he know where he was going to be?
Yeah, and he'd been tracking him, but it's kind of like, well, how though? You know, like how was he able to track him to that specific place? And so that was really interesting. But so of course, you know, now Mandalorian kind of realizes, okay, you know, we've got company. By that point, Grogu has activated the Seeing Stone, and you know, this giant like force field like thing kind of pops up. And so he's like, all right, well, you know, I'm going to handle whatever this is down here while you get your answers or whatnot. And so that's when he kind of, you know, comes into the conflict with Boba Fett. And then I really like their exchange too, you know, especially when he brings the sniper into play. The woman that he thought they left for dead on Tatooine, she pops back up. I forgot her name. But so yeah, so after we kind of see that, you know, they kind of get into this whole exchange and about, you know, now Boba Fett's pretty much just laying it out on the line, like, you know, look, this is what I'm here for. Like, I don't care about whatever else you got going on. That's none of my business. I could care less. Just came here for my armor. Just give me that. I'll just get out your hair.
Well, now that's a really good point too, because one of the things that I was wondering when they were going to reintroduce Boba Fett was how are they going to characterize him?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, he's in the entire original trilogy, he only had like a couple of lines, you know? I mean, it wasn't like he was, you know, it's like he's no good to me dead. As you wish. You know, just a few lines like that. Like there wasn't anything that really gave him a lot of character. I mean, the only character that we really knew of is through Django.
And either Django or other people, like, you know, other people's response or reaction to him, like Vader walking up to him, no disintegration, you know, or, you know, Vader stopping him from shooting, you know, Chewie when he broke loose or something like that. Like, or even Han, like Boba Fett, where? You know, I'm freaking out.
But again, though, that's more like that's definitely like reactions to him, but we never really you get an idea of what person he is by the fact of how people are basically you know, acting around him. That's true.
Yeah, he's actually feared, and you could tell by the reaction, or he's respected in a lot of ways. Feared or respected, depending on how you want to look at it. You know, it's in the eyes of the beholder at that point. But yeah, you kind of see that or glean that from everybody else's responses to him, to his presence just being around.
But you never really get a feel for what he's like, though, is I guess is my point. And especially after he's been in the Sarlacc, we still don't know how long he's been in there.
Well, I mean, and the only thing we've gotten into Boba Fett's world is actually more so during the Clone Wars when he's a little kid.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? That's the most we really honestly got out of him. But there's a lot has changed since then, you know.
And not only that, but even then, it was only a couple of lines. You know, get him.
No, I'm talking about the animation of Clone Wars.
Oh, right. Yeah,
when he's running.
Yeah, that's true.
And
no, that's a good point.
So that's what we kind of saw, you know, his temperament, you know, of course, obviously at that age, he had a, you know, huge temper, but he had a lot of anger. But then like now, you know, as an adult, you know, once again, most bounty hunters are kind of like that. You know, bounty hunters really don't care. And that's a cool thing I like about them, because they're like the bounty hunters of like this planet, if you will, where like they don't care what your issue is. They don't look, I'm just here to bring you in per the court or per whoever's hired me to bring you in. I'm not interested in your politics. I'm not interested in what you're doing. I'm paid to bring you in. That's it. So to me, like that's kind of, you know, all Boba Fett's, you know, pretty much been about, because that's kind of like what his whole species is, or not, I won't say species, but you know, his whole clan, if you will, even Django, you know, it's like, all right, you know, I'm paid to do a job.
And that was one of the things that I really liked about this exchange, is the fact that they were, I mean, Boba was basically giving him a little bit of a history lesson. You know, he was going over the fact that when he was trying to get the armor, because, you know, Din was basically saying, as he always does, like, you're not a Mandalorian, you don't get the armor.
Right.
And, you know, he was like, okay, here we go. So now he had to tell him all about Django. And I thought it was interesting that they made him that they actually said, okay, he and Django were foundlings, you know, that they retconned that a little bit. But I thought that was cool, because he was in the original, like in Legends, he was supposed to be Jaster Real or whatever, and he was an actual Mandalorian and all this other stuff. And then Lucas kind of disrupted that whole canon. And then, of course, he wasn't a real Mandalorian. He was just somebody that just kind of, I mean, both he and Django basically, you know, appropriated the Mandalorian culture and look and all this other stuff and just went around. And I thought that was actually an interesting thing too, because it basically it gave you the whole thing about how would the Mandalorians react to these guys that are famous, but they're not really Mandalorians, and they're essentially tarnishing the name. You know what I mean? But then what Favreau and Filoni did that I thought was a stroke of brilliance is it's like, no. We're going to restore their Mandalorian status to them. And that makes it a lot more interesting. Ronaldo says, I heard a theory about how Boba could find Din Djarin. Boba may be working for the Empire and was able to find him thanks to the Razor Crest tracker. Now, I thought of that too, but I don't know. If he was working for the Empire, now granted, he could have changed his mind. He could have just been like, you know what? I'm not going to work for them anymore. But the thing is during the scene that we're talking about now, basically he's just all like, yeah, okay, you know what? You gave me the armor, and in return, now I'm going to stick by you and defend you and protect the child and the whole shot.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool because you knew that it was going to go one of two ways with this. You need either it was going to be Boba was going to be hired by the Empire and it's going to be Boba versus Mando, or they were going to team up in some way, and then that was going to, somehow manifest itself, I guess would be the best way, into a really cool partnership, and then they would go off and.
Right. One thing I did enjoy about this episode was the fact that, we actually got to see Boba actually in action, like him really.
Oh, man.
And Boba likes, now see.
That gaffy stick, dude. I mean.
That whole mace thing that he had, Now, here's my thing. That's kind of how we've always wanted Din Djarin to be. I mean, we kind of saw him do that a little bit. But not to the effectiveness of Boba, though.
Well, but then again, you think about it, the Boba's been around a little bit longer. He's been through a lot more. He's been in a lot of wars. He's been in, he's a warrior. And I was like you, I was really happy that they really showed him in action, not some slapstick, when he gets hit with a staff or whatever and goes flying against the wall. I'm like, really? You set him up so perfectly in A New Hope. And I'm going to say it, even the holiday special, when we did the review a couple weeks ago with that, I was really surprised by the whole little animated Boba Fett thing that they did.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I could have watched, I remember all three of us were totally like, kind of like that, just completely absorbed in the whole thing and going, dude, if they had just released a little bit longer of that, made it a little bit more feature length or something, that could have been the holiday special, and it would have been slamming. But they chose Life Day and their other little stuff. But what was interesting to me, though, is that they had set him up in those two, plus Empire Strikes Back, and you just figured, like, okay, maybe because we knew that Han was going to get out of the carbonite, maybe in Return of the Jedi, we were going to see some stuff. But then what did we get? We got this whole stupid, not only did they quote unquote kill him off, I mean, even though there were always rumors that he was going to survive and all this other stuff, but I mean, what a complete waste. And honestly,
they totally Captain Phasma him.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. And it's not just Lucas either, because they're doing it now in the sequel trilogy. They create these cool characters and then they waste them or do something stupid with them. I mean, at least Phasma didn't totally go out like a punk, though.
True.
But
one thing I did love was that the scene where, of course, they're like the midst of this whole gunfight, and Boba kind of runs into the Razor Crest and puts the armor on really quick, and he comes back out and he flies, and he's like the Boba Fett now, like how we've always seen him. And man, like, we thought like Mando's like little tricks and his little gadgets were cool. Yeah, Boba Fett is like Iron Man, dude. He's got stuff in his kneecap. He's got, I'm just like,
and just the way he was able to take out all these stormtroopers and stuff like that. I mean, it was just, and I mean, when he was taking the gaffy stick, which of course is a Sand People weapon, which is really interesting that he has it. And now you really see the devastating effects of this thing. Like, before, when you're seeing the Sand People just, kind of wave around or whatever, you're like, okay, maybe it's not the most effective weapon in the world. But when you see Boba wielding it,
when he's smashing troopers' helmets, I'm just like, dude.
I mean, then the sound design of that too, where it's just like you felt it in your chest, and I mean, you really felt the pain. Like, I honestly, it's like it was hitting me with that stuff. And just shatting the helmets and doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, dude, this is just insane.
Man. He wasn't playing around. Now, of course, then we see, of course, Gideon unleashes the Dark Troopers on to retrieve young Grogu, and as he's in his whole meditative state, sitting up on the Seeing Rock, which I thought sucked because it's like, okay, Mando tries to go get him, all, like on numerous occasions, he keeps getting blocked by this force field. And it's like, had that force field would have, been up when the Dark Troopers tried it, I'm guessing they probably wouldn't be able to get him either. And it's just like, oh, how convenient that this whole force
that is
kind of,
that he was basically done doing whatever he was doing.
Yeah, practicing his mantra or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever that was. I mean, but it did crack me up though. Like the whole time that Din was trying to get in there.
Yeah, and
he's like fighting, and it just it just kept repulsing him backwards and stuff. And number one, it also gives you a little bit more of an emotional connection too. I mean, he really cares about Grogu.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool that he's like, because if you think about it, you think that he would have come to the conclusion of, you know what? If I can't get to him, probably nobody else can either.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't though. He kept trying to like, no, man, I got to save him. I got to help him. I got to do this. And basically it was like every time. And, you would think that after a while, because that did not look painless to me. You'd think that after a while, you'd just be like, you know what? I'm going to give this a couple of minutes.
How hurt were you when you saw the Razor Crest blow up?
I did have a little bit time to prepare because there was, like I said, on the show Friday.
Oh yeah, that's right. You read about it.
I was fully prepped on a lot of the spoilers. There wasn't anything that wasn't spoiled for me. Like there were no surprises, but still to actually see it, because the Razor Crest has become
like the Falcon almost.
I mean, maybe not quite as nostalgic, but it's his ship, and it was his home, and it was Grogu's home too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, again, this is another really interesting choice to me about why they made this move.
Mm-hmm.
Because
he's got to get another ship at some point. But
what's he gonna do? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, he's gonna have to hitch rides with.
You got to get that space Uber.
Yeah, or probably, I don't know how many people. I mean, Slave One I know can hold at least 2 people, but I don't know if it can hold 3.
Well, yeah, it's got to, because you got like bounties that she's picking up, so I'm sure he's probably got cargo holds. I mean, probably not. It may not be in the.
Well, yeah, but I mean that'd be like a 2-seater, and you're riding in the trunk or something. It's like, yeah, technically you can do it, but I don't know if it would be comfortable.
Ronaldo says, man, when I saw Boba destroying the stormtroopers, I thought, is this really the same guy from episode 6?
Right? Exactly.
Yep. And then he also says the destruction of the Razor Crest broke my heart. Yeah, it definitely did. And then also, like, it kind of broke your heart when you finally saw those Dark Troopers like peel away with, young baby Yoda.
Oh man, the scene where they're like flying up and everything, and he's, kind of, I mean, he just looks so helpless and so hurt and scared.
Yeah, man. It's just like, wow. But you got to create that tension, which was done really well. I also like the fact that once they did get him onto the ship, Gideon is now, in his whole little Vader mode, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, he had this like almost Riddler or Joker like glee to him.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of, I mean, especially because a couple of the things that I wanted to point out, and I was trying to remember every little thing about this episode, because there's a lot of little nods, of course, to other canon and everything, but one of the main ones, and I don't know if a lot of people caught it. I mean, some people are actually talking about it online or whatever, but when he basically was, showing him the Darksaber and stuff, and he's like, you're not ready for this, it'll put your eye out or something. That was basically a reference to that still that Mark Hamill, remember he was putting the saber to his eye? That was basically like Favreau and Filoni's little nod to that photo. Yeah. Which again, it just goes to show that these guys are, I mean, every little minute detail, Yeah. And this is one of those episodes that definitely furthers canon a lot. I mean, it's like you've got basically Boba Fett officially Because, there were some people at the end of episode 1 that were kind of like, well, that could have been Rex. Because, Tamira Morrison basically played all the clones.
True.
So there was a lot of people that were like, I don't necessarily think that this is Boba Fett just yet. Now, though,
yep,
we know.
We definitely know.
Now, were you disappointed that Boba didn't have his pants and his full armor or uniform? He kind of did, but kind of didn't.
The uniform and everything. Yeah, he did have it, but no, it didn't. Honestly, like, I like the humor they actually showed with Boba Fett having. He's like, use that missile. He's like, oh man, great shot. He was like, I was actually aiming for the other one. So I just thought that was like kind of cool and funny. And just to see Boba, like, once again, we've always looked at these guys like the Mandalorians, like we've looked at the Empire, and like Aftermath did an excellent job with it. When you have these characters that we automatically see in our minds, or that's put in front of us as these are the bad guys, these are evil, because they're not the heroes that we know. So obviously they must be the bad guys. And then you actually kind of figure out, like, these guys are just kind of neutral. These guys are just, like, all right. They're good people. They just, like, in the sense of like Boba Fett, like, he's not a bad guy. I don't think he's just the numbers of the rebels just kind of came up and he just had to go after.
Well, it's like you said, he was a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Bounty hunters are, they, depending on the job they take, depends on whether or not they're good or bad.
Well, just like smugglers or like the pirates, like Hondo. It's like you look at somebody like Hondo, he's a pirate, but he's actually like lovable.
Yeah, well, right. But you would still characterize him as a bad guy. He's just a lovable bad guy.
But he's still but he does like a lot of good things for the good. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, is he really bad, or is he just bad sometimes? Or is he, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not like, I guess, like a Vader or a Palpatine bad. So it's like almost like there's a level to, his nefarious ways, if you will. Ronaldo asks, what did you think of Tython's appearance? It doesn't look like what we've seen in the games or in the comics. I like that they didn't make a giant temple and kept it small. I think that's only part of it. See, I think they were wise, because I think Tython's coming back in another form or another medium in the movies or another TV series. So I think the Seeing Stone is just almost like it's almost kind of being like at a college. Like, that's not the main campus. That's one of those buildings.
Well, here's another thing you got to look at. And this is a trap that we fall into as Star Wars fans, because Star Wars is notorious for going, okay, we're going to take like one of the basic climates or environments on Earth and make a whole planet out of it. So here's the forest moon, right? So the whole thing's a forest. And here's Hoth, which is an ice planet. And then you have Coruscant, which is an entire city planet. And, Mustafar is the lava planet. So, we've been conditioned that whenever you visit any of these planets, whatever section that you're seeing represents the whole planet. But they started to do this a little bit in Rogue One, and even a tiny bit, not to the degree they should have, but in the sequel trilogy, where that would be like landing and visiting the Grand Canyon on Earth and thinking that was the entire planet was like that. And I think that a lot of times we have to try to remember that, like in Tython's case, we're seeing like a small little representation of the planet. We really don't know what the rest of it looks like.
Right.
You can't just assume that what we saw is representative of the entire planet, because honestly, planets just, they don't totally work that way. Well,
yeah, Star Wars universe, and so sometimes, yes.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I get why you would think that, because a lot of times, like, when you look at Hoth, it's this giant snowball, and then you look at,
well, it's a giant snowball, or right.
The whole planet is glowing, it's lava, but so I could understand, or Camino, Same thing. It's a water planet.
Water, yeah, exactly. Or
But
even Tatooine, Jakku, or pick your desert planet. But
yeah.
that seems to be a common theme that everybody likes too, is the whole desert planet. But it's not necessarily like that.
Well, I think to Ronaldo's point though, I think he's talking more so about the temple aspect of it, because he said it doesn't look like what we've seen in the games or the comics, and I think that's what he was referring to. But the temple itself, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think the Jedi temple, I think there's just sections too, because like if you recall, like the whole planet itself is imbued with the Force pretty much. So the Jedi have just created their temple there, and there's probably different areas or different points within that place. No different than when we went to wasn't Ryloth, but it was where Ezra's from.
Lothal.
Lothal. Yeah, so like in Lothal, like okay, like there's a temple there. Like the whole place has its own city. Kind of has like that, Mos Eisley vibe to it in the city part. But then on the outskirts of it, you got this whole temple thing that, you can go into that's like totally, imbued with the Force.
Well, no, what you're saying is true, but I have a slightly different take on this.
From a certain point of view. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of from a certain point of view thing, but think about it. When we had that picture up last time, that was from the Old Republic. That's what that temple looked like in the Old Republic. Let me remind everybody, the Old Republic was like 10,000 years earlier. Okay, so it may have actually looked like that. Like, I mean, the temple or whatever may have actually looked like that. But flash forward to this, where we're at now, in the time period of the Mandalorian, it could be like ruins. It could be maybe just, decayed, dilapidated a little bit. Could be all kinds of things. All I'm saying is there are reasons why the temple may have looked the way that it did. And it's not necessarily what everybody would think.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's get to the meat of the matter. So Grogu is having some fun tossing some stormtroopers around.
Yeah, that's really what I'm thinking, is that, Grogu is just being a child. But at the same time, I think it's dangerous that Grogu leans that way.
Tomorrow, as far as, the whole using the Force.
Your audio's unplugged. The dark side rises again. But basically, yeah, I'm thinking that essentially what's happening is that a lot of people would think, hey, listen, you have a lot of dark side thing going on with Grogu. I mean, definitely there was a little bit, because you did have some when he force choked Cara Dune. But at the same time, you have to remember, he was just protecting Din. Right? I mean, he was actually just trying to protect essentially a father figure to him. It wasn't like, he was really trying to be evil or anything. He was just trying to be like basically a protective guy, and he knew he had those powers. So that's the kind of thing that, you have to look at when you see his actions, and especially when you interpret his actions at the end of this particular episode. At the end of this episode, he was just basically pretty much, I mean, granted, I guess you could say that he was having a little bit of fun, but at the same time, you have to look at it like
what is his intent? Because remember, this is what we always say about the dark side. What is the intent? Remember what we said and what Filoni said. The dark side is selfish. The light side is selfless. So you have to take these things into consideration. And I don't think that Grogu is at the point yet where he's making those conscious decisions. I think that he's still looking at it like he's a kid and he has these powers and he's aware that he has these powers, but he's not entirely sure what to do with them. And a lot of times, think about it, he was taken prisoner, right? And these stormtroopers are obviously guarding him, so pretty much like a little kid, he's throwing him around and he's kind of entertaining himself. I don't necessarily think that there was like an evil intent in that, but I think that what ends up happening is he just, I don't know, it just seems to me like he just wasn't really trying to be evil. Now, of course, when he force chokes and everything, I think a lot of times that's a protective vibe. That's kind of a protective measure. I don't necessarily think that he's out there, you know, like Darth Vader is, like going out and force choking people. And I think that we really have to be careful about the way that we're interpreting this stuff, because it's very easy to look at somebody force choking and go, oh, yep, evil, dark side. Mm-hmm. And we did establish that. I mean, to a degree, we did say, hey, listen, the force choking thing is a dark side power. Now, again, though, there's intent behind that. And that is, I am going to achieve what I want to achieve through these very selfish, aggressive means. Because remember, the Jedi are basically like, no. They're more passive. They're more, you know, for defense. Force choking is definitely an offensive move. Now, a lot of people, a lot of times will point out that, yeah, but in Legends, Luke used Force Lightning, which is true. But we have yet to see him do that in the new canon. I think a lot of times some of those Legends authors, and this is the problem that I have with Legends sometimes, is that they basically will sit around and be like, you know what would be cool? What if we had Luke shoot Force Lightning? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's do that.
Can you hear me?
And it was. I read that book. It was immensely cool. The other way that he did it, though, he basically used it against the Yuuzhan Vong, which, I mean, in his defense, it's about one of the only force powers that would work against them. So there's that. But I think that, you know, you just have to balance how you're interpreting Grogu's actions, because even when he does something cool, it's not even necessarily him being light side. He's basically a kid and he's reacting. He's basing a lot of things on instinct. And I think that is really the important thing that you have to interpret when you're pretty much looking at his actions. But again, I mean, you know, if you guys are thinking something different, let me know. Let me know right now in the chat section. We can talk about it. If you're thinking about something different on the rebroadcast of this, hey, let us know in the comments section, because there's a lot of times where, like I said, I will actually engage everybody pretty much the chat's in at some point, because the whole idea of this channel is to start a discussion. It's to engage in a discussion. This isn't just about two guys that are sitting here talking about Star Wars. We actually like to discuss things with you guys. And this whole thing with Grogu, I think, is really important, because, again, it's really tempting to sit there and go, yep, he's throwing around stormtroopers and force choking people. Definitely dark side. Or he's, you know, doing all kinds of really cool things and protecting, right? When he was basically protecting Din against that, I forgot what that creature was, that rhino-looking creature. And then also when, what else did he do that was kind of light? Oh, when he healed.
The Great Carcass.
man, what's his name? Grief. You know, basically everybody goes, oh, look at that. That was a light side power. Well, not necessarily. You know, he was doing what he felt he needed to do. He's a kid. He's reacting. So I think that we definitely have to be careful about how we go about interpreting his actions. Now, I will say that, you know, moving on, and then Daryl, when you, if and when you get your audio issues worked out before the end of this episode, feel free to chime in. Worst comes to worst, you know, you can always put a comment in the comment section. Ronaldo says, Eric, I think Daryl is having trouble with the audio. Yeah, I know. That's why I've been talking for the last 3 minutes, trying to, you know, give him a little bit of time. Not that I didn't have all this stuff that I wanted to say, but I did want Daryl's reaction to it. Wave hi to us, Daryl. See, he's still there. You know, like I said, man, if worst comes to worst, just write a comment in or something. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people are good at lip reading. You gotta love it. You know, like I said, today was kind of was a little bit under duress, but we had to bring this episode to you guys. We had to. But it does end though with a kind of a little dark vibe, because, you know, it was adorable, but it kind of broke my heart to see Grogu in those little tiny binders that he had. I mean, it was kind of cute, but at the same time, it was a little heartbreaking. Like, man, you know, it really gives you the gravity of the situation. And I'll be honest with you guys, I did not expect him to be captured. I was really surprised when the Dark Troopers, you know, did their thing and you know, basically captured him and were flying him up to the ship or whatever. I totally thought that Boba Fett or Din or somebody was going to save him. I was amazed that he actually was captured. Now, keep in mind, it does make sense for the story for him to be captured, because if he keeps evading capture, it's sort of like, well, you're never really going to find out the plan. One of the things that's interesting, by the way, is that everybody on a lot of the Star Wars message boards are all trying to cast Thrawn now. And there's been some people that have made a good point. They say, well, how do you know Thrawn's actually going to be in it? Now, we've actually gone on record as saying that that could be a season 3 thing, that we may not see Thrawn at the end of season 2. But, because remember, we only got 2 more episodes left. This Friday and next Friday, and that's it. Nope, still nothing. Poor Daryl. But essentially, I do think there's a good chance we're going to see Thrawn in season 3. So my question to you guys, whether you're chatting with us live or whether you want to put it in the comments section, who do you think should play Thrawn? So Daryl, you should chat in who you think should play Thrawn, because this one's kind of important. But I will say it's either between Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced him in Rebels, or Michael Fassbender. Those would be my 2 choices on who should play Thrawn in season 3 of The Mandalorian for a live action Thrawn. Now, again, there's just a lot of people that have been throwing around a lot of names. My favorite one is Adam Sandler. Somebody actually said that Adam Sandler should play Thrawn, which cracked me up. I could not believe that somebody would actually say that. But again, it's funny because somebody put a picture of Adam Sandler and Thrawn, like one of the animation. I don't think it came from Rebels. I think it actually came from either one of the comics or maybe one of the like the drawn pictures of him on one of the book covers or something. But there is a resemblance. And what people have been saying is they think that he could pull it off only because of movies like Punch Drunk Love, Uncut Gems, things like that. And I agree that Sandler has the dramatic range to pull it off, but he just doesn't have the voice. He doesn't have, a lot of the other necessary things in order to pull it off. I mean, Adam Sandler is not the best choice, in my opinion, to actually play Thrawn. But, but I get it. When somebody put those two pictures side by side, I'm like, he actually looks a little bit more like I could see them, doing it. But that was a crazy suggestion in my mind. But again, who else did people bring up? People are bringing up all kinds of interesting people to play them. But the question is, who do you guys think should play Thrawn in season 3? But, in closing, I think that this was a really fantastic episode. I think that, Daryl said they also brought up Steven Seagal. I saw that too. And again, he'd have to lose a tremendous amount of weight. But if he kind of had that Under Siege look that he had, I could almost see that too. Because somebody actually painted him. Like they took a photo of him and kind of painted him and made him look a little bit like Thrawn, with the blue skin and stuff. And I thought, okay, well, I can see it. Still sticking with Lars Mikkelsen or Michael Fassbender. Those would be my two choices. But like I said, what would you who do you think should actually play the live action Thrawn in season 3? Let us know in the comments section. Or you still have maybe 30 seconds to chat it in. But with that, I think this is going to do it for our Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 6 review. Next week, of course, we'll do Episode 7. And again, if you guys like these review shows that we're doing or whatever, we'll do more of them. Because the more content that we can bring you guys, the better. And doing all kinds of review shows, hey, we'll go back and we'll review the Clone Wars if you want, or Rebels, or any of the other stuff. And we'll do, these little videos, and we'll even do them live. Maybe we'll continue doing this whole Monday, let's review something. Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's one of the animated shows. Maybe it's, they're releasing a pile of Disney Plus shows that are going to come out. So we can do that. But whatever you guys are into, let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, hey, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Or follow us if you're watching us on Twitch or our Facebook group. And of course, don't forget to hit us up at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for communicating with us and, just generally chatting with us. So that's going to do it for our episode this week. Don't forget to watch us this Friday at 8 o'clock when we will be doing our normal show. There's no shortage of things to talk about when it comes to Star Wars, guys. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel. He's Daryl Sanders. May the Force be with you always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you always.